back to Fast Market here on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Hey, thank you.
So we're talking Lululemon. The stock's probably kind of outperformed. It's only down 6% so far this year. I've been seeing a lot of price target hikes. It seems like maybe they've got some metrics, some of these analysts. But what kind of data are you guys seeing out of LikeFolio on Lululemon? I think this is a big quarter for them.
Yeah, it is a huge quarter for them. It's probably the most important quarter of the year for Lululemon. And when we look at U.S. website visits, so the number of people visiting Lululemon website, we're seeing a real spike this quarter from a year-over-year perspective. One that we haven't seen in quite a while in terms of overall momentum. Very, very high, all-time highs in number of people visiting their website, which tells us that the direct-to-consumer approach that they're taking is working really well. And that Lululemon products and brands are popping at the right time, the holiday season. On the other hand, with all of this demand comes some inventory pressure. We're seeing that start to take hold as well, where, people talking about Lululemon being out of stock of a specific item, absolutely surging as well. And so we've seen this with other companies in the past, and Lululemon has, referenced it in some prior earnings calls, and that is this ability to keep inventory, to know where this demand is going to come in. It's a really tricky game for these companies, especially when they're in that direct-to-consumer model, and they're expected to always have on hand what the consumer wants and when the consumer wants it. And so overall, I think Lululemon is positioned really in a position of strength from a brand and consumer demand perspective. What we're going to have to wait to find out is whether they are successfully fulfilling those orders, or if they're leaving money on the table from a revenue perspective because they can't get the inventory out there. But overall, I think Lululemon positioned long-term extremely well for long-term growth.
Andy, in 2018, their new CEO, Calvin McDonald, came in with his power of three, right? He wanted to do double digital revenue, he wanted to do double men's revenue, and he wanted to quadruple international revenue. That was a 5-year plan in 2018. They reached 2 of those by 2021. So now he came out and with a new 5-year plan, and it's basically similar. Double, quadruple these. So the nice thing about it is, even though their e-commerce is doing extremely well, the investments there paid off huge, they still went in 2016 from 400 stores to 2022 to 600 stores. So they're still growing and investing in brick and mortar, even as the rest of e-commerce and all this keeps growing. Is this the right play for them? Is still brick and mortar and that boutique feel that each one of these stores has, is that the right game plan for them?
Yeah, I really think it is. I think this is a company that really knows their consumer very, very well. They have throughout the history of the company, and I think that continues even with the new CEO and aggressive growth plans. They continue to create very happy customers, and they're in the right niche. When it comes to fashion and apparel, the high end is doing very well, which we've talked about on this show many times. That divide kind of between luxury or high-end goods and the basics is growing considerably, and the high end is doing very, very well. That's where Lululemon sits. So they have that tailwind behind them, in addition to being a company that does extremely well by its customers, whose customers tend to be very loyal and very happy with their purchases. So really just all in a really nice company in a nice niche.
Yeah, and when Piper Sandler came out with their semi-annual research, Andy, this name Lululemon, I didn't even realize this, is number 2 behind Nike as far as popular brands. When you guys look at this on maybe a happiness scale, you mentioned that that repeat customer and expanding the product offering is key, but happiness levels remain elevated to you guys?
Yeah, happiness levels remain elevated. It seems like the primary concern that consumers have when they're talking negatively about the company is that they don't have the item they wanted, which is kind of one of those champagne problems that Lululemon is one of those companies that tends to fix very quickly. So I think it's not about dissatisfaction with the products or the pricing. It's simply that demand is too high for the company to fulfill at certain times. So that's the type of negative attention we like to see companies getting, at least in the short term.
Well, it looks like a lot of your data is pretty positive here. So going into this earnings result, what's your earnings score from LikeFolio?
Yeah, pretty neutral overall because, like you said, the stock has been very buoyant and is at relative highs, especially compared to the rest of the market. I think if we get a pullback on good numbers, that's a fantastic opportunity for long-term investors to take a look at this company.
Definitely. Okay, so neutral, but some of that data turning positive. And I mentioned before, a lot of analysts are starting to up their price targets ahead of earnings. And we haven't seen that this earnings season at all. All right, great stuff. As always, Andy, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio, breaking down the Lululemon data here, Kev.